We've been told by the government that the rationale for this policy isn't class hatred or class warfare, but it's a revenue generation mechanism for state schools. It's a sort of novel hypothecated tax where education has always been tax-free in this country and, in fact, around the world. And even going back to the last flowering of Labour's socialism in the 1970s, even when we had beer and sandwiches in number 10, they didn't suggest that we should take socialism into the classroom in the way that this government currently is. So if tax take is, in fact, the rationale, where is the impact assessment? How much will actually be raised by this, and what will be the cost associated with the implementation of this policy? We've already heard that some 10,000 students have left the private sector and are going into the state sector just this September. What impact will there be on those children's education? I have a local headmaster I went to see on Friday for a private school in my constituency, the only one I'm aware of, and I should at this stage register my interest. I have one child at a fee-paying school. He said that locally their primary schools are totally full and that there is not space for those children who are leaving the private sector to go into local primary education. So what's the impact? What's the impact assessment on SEND children? That private school in my constituency, it has 34% of its intake are pupils with special educational needs, partly because of the delay in the EHCP process. Are they going to be penalised? What happens when they get taken out of their educational setting now and put into a new school with new friends or the lack of it? What's going to be the impact on their personal education? What's going to be the impact on SEND provision in the county of Norfolk? Yes, I will.
I've always had great concern for segregation in our education system. However, parents in York are saying that due to the different pedagogy, environment and culture, certain independent schools provide the only way their children with SEN, anxiety or indeed care experience can currently access education. So it's through necessity, not choice. Does he agree that the government should not only publish an impact assessment, but an impact assessment before the budget so we can assess the full analysis of this policy?
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Lady. I'm sorry she waited so long to intervene, and I quite agree with the point that she makes. There's another issue which we need to have an impact assessment on, and that's the provision of boarding facilities for children in care, again provided in my constituency. This school provides full boarding, not just for children in care, but also for the boarding pathway programme put forward by Norfolk County Council for children on the edge of care. This is their education being the single point of continuity in these children's lives. And this policy has the real risk of reducing that support, removing them from their school and from their friends, and halfway through an educational year. So what assessment has this government undertaken before the budget on these policies and the costs, and what mitigation they're going to put in place? Now, we've already heard about the impact on military families. Is it right to target the children of our servicemen for this hypothecated tax? Was not targeting poor pensioners enough for this government?
Will my friend give way?
Yes, I will.
Is it not the case that this policy disproportionately affects those on lower and middle incomes, who the vast majority of these students are from, families of? Parents who I've spoken to in my constituency are really concerned. They've foregone foreign holidays, a new car, a bigger home, because they've chosen to invest in their children's education. And shouldn't government be encouraging people to make those right decisions on behalf of their families, rather than penalising them?
My honourable friend is absolutely right. It feels like the government has this cartoon characterisation of what a private education looks like. It's got top hats and tails, but that's not the real experience of the modern private educational sector. And it brings me nicely on to the impact on bursaries. At this school in my constituency, 20% of fee revenue goes on bursaries. It's exactly that level of support for people with greater financial disadvantage that is going to be the first casualty of this unfair and ill-thought-out policy. It's a very odd target, again, for a tax take. And what about the impact on local businesses? So this school employs 286 people of all sorts of different types in my constituency, and they're already having job cuts undertaken. So I asked the government to think again, Dame Caroline. The introduction of this ill-thought-out policy halfway through the academic year, surely that needs to be revisited. the impact of children who are sitting for public examinations. It's always bad to have to change school through circumstances forced upon you, but even more so when you're sitting for GCSEs or A-levels. So at the very least, this policy should not be implemented for people in those years. Pupils applying for educational and health care plans, the delay of the government process in undertaking those assessments should not be forcing costs upon those parents who are taking active steps to support the education of their children when the government is taking too long. Military families, specialist schools for music and dance. There's no evidence that the government has put forward to support its stated objectives for this policy. It feels self-evidently rushed. The only people who are here to support it are those who are paid to do so. And it's the vulnerable children in our society are going to be paying the price of this internal Labour politics.